Good evening, and welcome to They Say. I'm so excited to have this legend amongst us today. Oh man, I'm like my heart is almost overwhelmed when I think about what impact she's made on my life, both professionally and just personally. She is someone that she is an influencer to influencers. She's a thought leader. She's a change agent. She's what I aspire to be. Like I feel like she's one of my greatest role models, and most importantly, she's one of my greatest truth tellers. So it's like when you, not to say you reach a certain statue, but when you reach a certain statue, y'all say it. When you reach a certain statue, you need someone that's willing to tell you the truth, and you can accept their truth because you know it's coming from a genuine place. So I am Allison McFarlane, founder of Allison McFarlane Inc. and host of They Say podcast. And I'm so honored to have Bambi here today. She, between her and Susan Dyson, Allison McFarlane Inc. would not be here today. So we're going to get into that. And I'm just so honored that she said yes to me. I'm so honored that she has played such a pivotal role in my life professionally and personally. So this is really going to be a dissection into all her greatness and how she's impacted so many of us. So I'm just honored that she said yes. So Bambi, please introduce yourself to everyone, and just thank you again for saying yes. Thank you for just being who you are to so many. But I can definitely speak that you have made such a major, impactful, intentional impact on me personally and professionally. And like I say, between you and Susan, Allison McFarlane Inc. would not be here without you ladies.
Well, wow. I mean, how do you follow that? Thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate it. The feeling is mutual. The feeling is for sure mutual.
Yeah.
I'm Bambi McCullough. I'm the CEO of Chrysalis Partners. What we provide is we help leaders and organizations really produce results that they didn't think were possible.
Yeah.
And so my work is really in the area of leadership and having people provide great leadership and having aspirations beyond where they currently are. It's what they didn't think. Most people would say, it's kind of like what you said, I didn't know that I could accomplish that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you still have a long way to go, and you're building a great business, right?
Yes,
ma'am. Yeah, and I've been doing this for a long time. It's 2024. Yeah, so I've been in business for 25 years.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That alone deserves kudos, accolades. And the thing is, though, that what I feel like you're so modest because you've been in business for 25 years, but the level of what you're achieved and what you're still producing, like it's not just little business. Like you do big business, Bambi. You do big business. So I'm excited to have you here because I think it's so important to be able to sit at the feet of those that came before you and are still and have done it and are doing it at a high level so that we can have like honest dialogue and be able to avoid pitfalls, right? Because I think we learn so much by really engaging intentionally and taking that time to listen to the wisdom of those that came before us. So I just thank you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, no problem. So, Bambi, let's start how I love to start. Tell us about Bambi. Like, how did all this 25 years of excellence and just how did you come about to get to where you're at today?
That's a great question. Well, I started out right out of college as a teacher. So I actually was a high school math teacher and a coach.
Wow.
And at some point I got introduced to banking. And so I had a 25-year career in banking. So I started out opening checking accounts and eventually was running my own bank and then took on the culture side of the bank. And when I took on the culture piece, the chairman of the bank took on this commitment to being a learning organization. Mm-hmm. And so he put out an article that said he was looking for a training officer. And at the time I was a bank CEO. That was probably 4 or 5 levels below where I was at the time.
Okay.
When I read that article, I really thought, I think that's my job. And they always kind of still thought of me as a school teacher because we had class at my bank. I've always been a learner. So the people around me that work for me, they know that they're going to learn. And so, I got the opportunity to take on the culture of this organization in Houston and help them create a learning company.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried everything. I got a chance to try everything. I went to every kind of institute you could find. I got to try every program you can find. And I was really looking at what would impact performance, what would help people be successful in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to start with the leadership.
Okay.
And so I found access to this methodology that I have now in my practice. We found a guy that started working with us to really help us, think from places we hadn't thought from before.
Wow.
Because, if you're going to create something extraordinary, doing things the way you've always done it isn't going to get you there. It'll get you a certain place. But if you're going to take on something, what I call bigger than yourself, really leadership is it's not about you. It's about others, right? How do I accomplish something beyond me?
Yes.
And it really does take looking. It really takes looking. It's interesting because there's some businesses here in Wimberley where I live now, and one of them, a couple of them are having problems, and they're putting out on our community news, please help us, please, please come see us. But the problem is what they're providing. In many cases, several of their restaurants, people don't want it, and so look and see, what am I providing that people don't need? You're not going to be successful. I don't care how much begging you do, right? You got to be listening for what have I been doing that's working? What have I been doing that's not working?
That's so good. And I want to let's unpack that a little bit, because I think of how our journey together started, right? So I was fortunate enough to be able to attend a leadership development, a year-long leadership development called Thought Leaders, that's produced through the Greater Houston Women's Chamber. And Bambi is the facilitator along with Susan. And for her to say you've got to look at what you've been doing and then realize that it's not working, I think that's what I know that's what really kind of gut punched me. Because I too, which Bambi knows, this is probably why I admire her so much. I was at a crossroads when I came to Thought Leaders. And a lot of us women in that particular class, which was a great class, like you ladies did so well about merging us all together, because we were all at different crossroads and just trying to figure out different things that we had going on, some professionally, some personally. But we were just at that place where it was time to make some like hard decisions. And I truly believe that through the work that you ladies did for us in that class, it was almost like a mirror where you had to look at yourself and really ask yourself, hey, is what I'm doing making a difference, or am I getting the same results? And it was having those tough conversations with yourself and with others that you don't really know, but over the time you've got to know. But being vulnerable enough to put down all the masks, all the things that we feel that are just so wonderful about us, our titles, our accolades, what we have, who we are, putting all that down to get to the core of, is what you're doing really working? And that was so amazing to me.
Well, and what's interesting, I think it goes two ways, right? I think part of what people recognize in there is, like you said, what have I been doing that's not working? But I think there's another piece to be responsible for, which is also, what are your gifts? And sometimes it's scary to really acknowledge that you're you're a very powerful woman, and sometimes even acknowledging that is scary, because if you really acknowledge who you are, then you got to own it. And so I think one of the challenges is putting that mirror, not only put the mirror and have us really be responsible for who we are, but owning it.
Yes.
And, I remember at one point somebody told me when I was at the bank, do you know how powerful you are? And I cried.
Why did you cry?
I didn't think that was a good word. I didn't think that was a good thing, because I had women back when I was in banking. There weren't that many people in leadership positions, and reputation of women at that time were not like what gets created through the chamber, which is very supportive of each
Yes.
other.
Yes.
So I just thought that meant I was a bad person, and I actually fired that coach.
Oh,
And I hired another one to help me deal with being powerful.
wow.
Now, how I define powerful is having what you say realized. It's not about your ego or about your title. In fact, I know you know this, that because you have a title doesn't mean you provide leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have collapsed leadership with title.
Yes.
We know today a lot of people who are not providing leadership but have titles.
Whew. That's
Right?
a whole conversation. Yeah, that's so true.
Well, and the other thing I would say about what you're talking about is really reflecting ourselves is that if you're not growing, you impact your organization.
Yep.
And it's not just about, and it is about reading, and it's about mentoring, right? It's about like you finding people that you can go to and that can support you, people like you that can show us how we show up, and how we can better represent ourselves, right? How can I evaluate what the market sees when they look my way?
Yes.
All those things are critical because we can't see ourselves.
That's so true. That's so true. That's so true. Hey, Emily, thought leadership. Woo, woo. um, Bambi, that's so true. But in your work, and you've done some, 25 plus years of amazing work. How has it been to be able to tell people at the top of their game, hey, you can't see yourself? How do they respond to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think that we're not born. I mean, I think at some point, people feel like I should know the answers, right? I get trained to be an engineer. I get trained to be an expert in marketing. I get trained to be a teacher or a doctor, and I'm supposed to know. I get trained to know. And so, even when you're a little kid, tie your shoes, brush your teeth, brush your hair. We're trained to learn and to know. But once you know, you quit looking. And so the people I work with, everybody's not a good fit for my work, because unless you're interested, unless you're coachable, being coachable is be willing to look.
Yeah.
And so I know sometimes people are uncomfortable. I just led a session the last 2 days. I guess it was Thursday and Friday, and to a leadership institute I lead for a client. And it's a year-long program for this group. And and my work has people think newly.
Yes.
And one of the gentlemen came up at the break and he started telling me, you need to be patient with me. Not like I'd done anything to him, right? But his voice was shaking. And I thought, wow, this guy's like really nervous.
Yeah.
But when I said, well, what are you nervous about? He goes, you're having me look at things I haven't looked at before. Wow. And it starts to like have them confront how they know themselves to be. So our brain wants to know how we are. Our brain wants to do it the way we've always done it. Because our brain wants to be able to predict our safety, right? And so I told him, I said, it's not unusual to be uncomfortable. But he said, I'm really interested. But it was interesting that he was, I don't know that I'm that intimidating, but he seemed to be a little bit intimidated by just talking to me one-on-one, because, I'd been in front of the room for the last 2 days. But I do think you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, which is one of the things that you were willing to do, is to actually really look. And that's courage. It does take courage.
It does take courage. And I think the interesting part was, I won't go into, I'll be more transparent on this one, because I've never really shared my story of how AMI kind of came to fruition. But I was at a hard place. I had been in banking for 15 years. Susan probably didn't know how much she saved me, because I was actually depressed, and no one really realized that, because I was in an environment where everything that I knew to be great and successful was being asked to kind of push down. Like they didn't want it. Everything that I did prior to coming to this particular place I was at, I was really successful, performed at a high level, but everything that I knew that I thought I did really, really well, they didn't want it. And then I had a leadership where that was very, like, very not encouraging and kind of nitpicking on me, and just challenging everything I thought I knew. And so you come into this place, 15 years of experience, or like 12 years prior to getting there, and you think you have an ideal of what has made you successful, but then you get into a place where they're telling you you're not what you think you are. And so I was depressed because I was like, man, I was so successful everywhere else. So being in this particular thought leadership, it allowed me to bring my baggage and the fact that I was hurting and I didn't know, like, I felt like such a failure. And it allowed me a space to admit that this is the first time in my professional life where I felt unsupported in something that I knew that I did well everywhere else, but this particular place, it just didn't. It wasn't, everything I was trying wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And so being in this room with these women who allow me this space to just say, hey, I'm Allison, and guess what, ladies, I don't have it all together. I'm miserable. I hate what I'm doing. And them and Bambi and Susan and them giving me a safe space to kind of just lay it all out. That truly changed my life. If you think about that year-long thing, because I really had to start confronting things and not just because I believe, like my parents' generation, you don't quit. You just keep going, even if you're miserable. You don't give up. You don't let them get the best of you. But I was just at my wit's end.
Yeah. It's well, first of all, I think I mentioned a minute ago, I think you're really courageous because it takes courage. It takes courage to acknowledge that. A lot of people stay unhappy because it does take courage, right? And I do think you also, we could all see, everybody in the class could see your brilliance. There was no question. But I think sometimes, I think one of the things that's important is to have a space where you can say what's going on. Sometimes, and we don't even say what's going on because, like you said, our parents say, suck it up, you're going to work hard, you don't quit, you just keep pushing harder. And sometimes that's not the place that you're supposed to be.
Right.
I really believe, I really believe that we all have something we're here to contribute in the world. And I did a retreat one time, and I asked this woman that was the facilitator about how did I know if what I wanted was what was consistent with my faith, which I'm committed to do what God has me here for. And she said, God gives you the desires of your heart.
Yes.
And I latched onto that. And and now when I'm coaching somebody, I listen for what is their heart's desire, because I believe, and I don't necessarily always tell my client, although a lot of my clients I can speak about my faith. I listen for what's there, and I think that's what for you, that's what showed up. But until we have a space where we can be free to say, this is how it's really happening for me, because we're trained to have it all together. And no matter whatever session I'm doing, it takes a while for people to get to the place where, they're willing to show, I don't have it all together. And the truth is, even though I've had a coach for many years, and, I've been through lots of training, I am still learning. I don't have it all figured out. And so I think having people to have a safe space where they can, and thought leaders I think that's one of the magic things about it is we create a safe space for people to, we get the right people together, right? We get like-minded people, leaders, and then give them a safe space. So then they can actually start to go, oh, know. But you gotta know where you're at. If you don't know where you're starting from, you can't. It's like, I think I'm in Dallas. But I'm really in Houston. I'm never going to get where I want to get. So having people get where they are, whether it's your numbers, or whether it's your weight, or whether it's your satisfaction with your job, right? Am I clear? Wait, I've been successful my whole life. What is happening here that they're not giving me accolades for what's, and it may just be that it was just time for you to
Yes.
see what the next thing for you was.
And I think that is why I'm so grateful because, like you said, having that safe space. And I think we take that for granted, safe spaces, because I don't, there's not many places I can speak for Allison, and I'm pretty sure same for you, because people assume that you're like a superhero, that nothing goes wrong with you. So it's not always welcome, your humanity, because people need to see you all together regardless of what's going on. So that can be a bit of a struggle. That
Yeah.
can be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. Brene Brown said something one time. If you know Brene Brown,
Yes.
she said something that said, you got to have your sacred people,
Yes.
people that you can, and for her, it was not 100 people. It was like your one or two people that you could say what you need to say to. And I will say for my clients, because I coach a lot of CEOs and their teams, and they share with me, and many times they'll say, I've not said this to anybody else.
Yeah.
And so if I don't create a safe space for them to be able to say whatever that is, I can't make a difference with them. I can't help them deal with whatever they're dealing with, and so having that, and that's one of the things I think that came from thought leaders is that you could call anybody in that group
Yes.
and have an honest, thoughtful conversation and know that you were safe.
Yes. And we still can. And that's the crazy part.
Right.
Like, we all are still very close. We're planning on getting together for an event. So it's having, and this is what I'm grateful for, because I feel like in a society where people don't celebrate like sisterhood or brotherhood or just coming together or humanity, right? Just the simple stuff. Having those spaces, like you said, like the women's chamber, like thought leaders, like the leadership developments that you do, having those places where what you say won't go beyond those walls, and you can just be, especially for people at executive levels, CEO levels, the highest of the highs, where you can see them as an individual and not so much as their title. I think that's something that is so needed now more than ever, because I know when me and you were talking prior to getting on for They Say, we're in such a pivotal place in life right now where people are, and I keep saying this, but I just want us to grasp the fact that it's like one of those, it's truly a changing of the guards moment, where people that were in certain positions, it's your turn to pass the torch, but some people are doing it with open arms and other people are resisting the fact that, hey, it's time for you to step aside and do something else and allow this next generation to come forth. So, Ben, how do you speak to those leaders that want to hold on too long?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I have one right now that's just told me that he is going to, he's created his transition plan, over time, right? 2 or 3 year plan. And his comment was, it's time for me to let somebody else lead.
That's awesome.
Not that he needs to leave, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, it's time for me to let somebody else lead. One of the things I work with people on is, I think sometimes when people won't leave, it's because they haven't created a future for themselves. And most of the time, we don't create futures. We actually look at the past and say, I want more than that, more than I did before. I want better than I did before, or I don't want that to happen. I want it to be different. And so more, it's not a creation. It's a avoidance of something, or a little bit more, but it's not a creation of an inspiring, exciting future. And so instead of saying, well, you should probably go, right? What I work with people on is to create a future for themselves that's an exciting place to go to. And I believe we need to be up to something.
Yes.
And even when we retire, I don't really like that word. I heard this guy, the expert on generations quite a few years ago on aging, and he talked about how the world has changed, that, you'd get born, you'd go to school, you'd go to college, you'd get married, you'd get a career, And that was the whole thing. And then you
Yes.
turned 65,
Yeah.
you went on the cruise, and then you died.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that was. But now we're living into our 90s and 100s even, right?
Yes.
And so people are having multiple careers after that. And so
Yes.
I think, first of all, I think people need to recognize, like, and even myself, I was a teacher, then I was a banker, now I'm an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
That there are chapters in our life. And, when you find that you're bumping up against to like you were, it's like, God, I'm not being successful here. This is not fun anymore.
No.
It might be a good sign that it's time to create.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can create it within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
I can create it like, where would I want to move, or what would I want to learn or take on?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe it's time for something different.
Right.
I've gotten comfortable now.
Yes.
And it's okay if you're comfortable and you're happy that way. That's not the people I work with.
No.
But
That's
it
not
really does take creating something. And we have a process that helps people create the future from the future, which we went through some of that with thought leaders, which
Mm-hmm.
start to create, well, what would I be doing if I was thrilled, if I was delighted, if I was fulfilling what really matters to me?
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And I like that. I like the fact that you embrace reinventing yourself. I think that's one thing I admire about you the most. Like, you never allowed yourself to stay stagnant in a particular position, but you had the courage to keep redefining what Bambi was. It's like Bambi 1.0, Bambi 1.5, Bambi 2.0, Bambi 2.5, Bambi 3.0. Like, I love it. Like, you just kept redefining yourself.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Listen, starting a business, as you know, is not easy.
No, it's not.
It's scary.
Yes.
And so, and it takes persistence.
Yes.
So sometimes people give up too early.
Yes.
So, but I think it's important, and then get support, right? Get support. Get people that'll give you honest feedback and honest. But then you got to trust yourself. There's also a piece of it. You got to trust yourself. I think people have been, there's knowledge, and then there's really, do I have all the gifts I need to do what now, again, like I said, I think you need to keep growing. That's my view. All the leaders that I work with that are really great leaders that are making huge impacts.
Yeah.
They're, I've got a guy I've been coaching for, my first client is still a client today. So, it's a 25-year client.
That's crazy.
But their people are not sitting back on their laurels and think that they have it all handled.
Right.
Right. So I'm still working with the executive team, and in this case, 120 of their leaders.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I think they're probably the highest performing of what they do in the nation.
Wow.
Right. And that's not an accident.
That's intentional.
That's because they continue to create, and we don't benchmark them against other companies anymore because they've passed them by.
Wow.
Right. So you have to create your own measures even.
Yes.
What does success look like for us? And how do you measure that? Measurement is also important.
That's interesting. But I think that's important because, especially being in that banking world, how it's like those KPIs, how does it look, right? What are your key performances? So being able to measure what it is that you're doing and what you're trying to achieve to see if you're actually getting the results you're looking for.
And that's hard. That's hard to do. When I first started my business, I was failing,
Yes.
And then we found out that we hadn't paid, we were renting a space, a training facility, the whole thing. And then we found out we weren't paying like the common area maintenance or something. They hadn't billed us right for 5 years. So they came back with this big bill, right? And I didn't want to look at the numbers because I thought if I looked at the numbers, I'd have to acknowledge that we were failing, right? And now I do I tell you where I really got successful is when I pay attention to my numbers.
That's good.
Right. So you got to know your numbers.
Yeah.
Even whether, and I'm also, as you know, I'm working on my well-being, and this past year I lost a lot of weight. Well, I haven't been doing as much paying attention to it. So this morning I got on the scale.
Okay.
I'm going to have gained weight. Because I'm like, Bambi, you need to know the number. Right. So you're back. Of course, today I had a healthy meal for lunch, and because I got on the number. Now, tell me I hadn't gained weight, but I haven't lost weight. So, but but anything that you're wanting to improve, you got to know what numbers you're starting with. And it don't have to, numbers don't have to, you don't have to judge them. Just what are they?
Right.
I know Emily knows that.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Our CPA.
Yeah.
Emily definitely knows the importance of the numbers.
Yeah.
But I like this, the fact that Brandon said, reinventing yourself is a key. And I definitely agree. And I think what's even important, even more so that's important, you and I kind of talked about the different generations, and I want to kind of get on that because you touched on it a little, but I want you to dig a little deeper because I believe that you have some nuggets there that you could share with us. So we're at an interesting point right now because we've got the baby boomers, we've got the millennials, which is myself, and then the Gen Z that is all coming together to make some magic happen.
Yeah.
And I know everybody has their opinion about the baby boomer, and then everybody has their opinion about the millennial, and then everybody has their opinion about the Gen Z. But how do you feel with the leadership work that you do? How can these generations, the different generations, really come together for a greater good?
Yeah. That's a good question. You know, I have my children are millennials, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a boomer, obviously, and I'm a boomer, and you know, I know there are lots of great experts like Jamie Boleen. You know, she's an expert on the generations.
Okay.
So I wouldn't call myself an expert on a generation, but what I am an expert is in having people listen to each other, and hearing each other, because my children don't behave. You know, just like you're responsible.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole conversation about millennials that they're not responsible and they're entitled, and that's not you.
No.
Right? Oh, Gen X, Ann saying, don't forget about
the Gen X. I think that's the generation of my daughter. She'll probably have a fit if I forget.
Yeah, right. So I have a hard time putting people in a category. Right?
Okay.
Just like male or female or black or white or Asian or whatever, right? Because we're all unique.
Yes.
So I don't like to if I put a label on somebody, I am relating to them that way and I'm interacting with them that way. So if we've already decided how people are, we limit what's possible for them.
Yeah.
So I like to train people to put aside what we already think about each other. And actually, you know, like I figure, you know, what is it I have to say about them? They're this way and that way, but put it aside and actually listen. If we actually hurt each other and you know, then we can have a common, whatever it is we're working on, right? Yeah. But I think for me, when I put them in people are in a situation in categories, then I start to make them wrong or have them be different or separate from me.
Okay.
You know, I prefer to train people to really listen. And by the way, for the most part, we don't listen to each other because we're already we call it in our work, we call it already always listening. We're already in a conversation before somebody walks in. We know how teenagers are, right? We know how HR people are. We know how engineers are. We know how millennials are. And so if we can distinguish, if we can determine what is it that I already decided about somebody, then at least I can hear what that person matters to that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. And I can honestly say I believe that's why you've been so successful. You've made it so easy for the simplest things, like your value of time. I remember because I am a strong type A personality, and when I go over my metrics, I remember Bambi gave us this concept of time and being late. And I just didn't get it. I was like, no, Bambi, if you're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock and you're here at like 9:01, I said you're late. And she's like, no, Allison, there's a concept of time. And Lord, it was very, very viable, but I still didn't comprehend it. And I still don't really comprehend it, but it was hilarious because I was like, so the time doesn't exist, Bambi? What are you saying?
Oh, that's funny. You're funny. Yeah, well, there's a couple things I'd say about all that. first of all, I do a program on time. So
Yes.
that's probably a little separate from that conversation. It's called, it changed my life actually.
Okay.
It's called Mission Control Productivity and Accomplishment.
Okay.
And it actually creates a breakthrough for people in time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, um, one of the things that's important in leadership is being a person of integrity,
Yes.
honoring your word.
Yes.
You know, you're not going to always keep your word,
Yes.
but do you honor your word? So if I said I wasn't going to do, if I said I was going to be on time for this call, right, and I didn't, then I'm not honoring my word.
Correct.
But if I called you and said, "Hey, I'm running late, right? Can we start? Can we start in the car?" I don't know. But the minute I know I'm not going to be able to keep my word, then I let you know.
Yes.
Now, one of the challenges I find with people managing their integrity, and the integrity that we take on in terms of one of the aspects of leadership, is not integrity like a judgment, but
Right.
like a positive model. Like
Right.
there's always something to manage.
Okay.
If I'm going to be late, most of the time it's because we haven't managed our calendar well. If something's going to happen, there has to be time for it to happen in.
That's smart.
So
It's
if
good.
I,
Something's
and
gonna happen.
I might say yes to 10 things, but I don't have any idea how much. I'm a yes waiting to happen. That's
Yes.
my challenge. That's why this program made such a difference. I lead the program because it makes a difference for people.
Okay.
Right? That's why I lead it.
Okay.
I don't feel like I make a whole lot of money on it. It just makes a difference. So um, that was authentic, right?
No, that was, and I appreciate that because that's the truth. Not everything. So wait, let's touch that. So not everything you do is going to be profitable, but it makes a difference in the long run.
Well, and it helps me also keep the conversation alive for myself, right? But for the most part, so if I could give people a nugget around all that, it would be, if you're going to do something, when is it going to happen, and scheduling the time to do it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, if you start to say, I got my to-do list, and you try to put that in your calendar, the time that it took to do it, plus interruptions, plus I got to go to the bathroom, plus I have to have lunch, and I got to drive, and you got to deal with traffic, it's not going to fit. And so being able to honor our word is difficult if we don't know how to manage our time.
That is so true.
And I find I'm most unhappy when I'm not honoring my word. That
Yes.
I have power when I know you can count on me.
Yes. That's good. But okay, that's good. And I love that because I feel like leadership isn't just the title, right? It's also an authentic leader is going to move in integrity. And that's what you're telling us, that we need to be integral and intentional with our movement. So when we say we're going to do something, let's honor it and actually deliver. That's and even if we can't do it, let's still honor it and say, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, I can't do this right now, but I want to be integral and make sure you communicate that to you so you know what's going on. Yes. And I definitely think, man, if more people move like that, what a better place we'd all be in. If you
take it on for your organization, they've actually determined, the research has shown that it's from 300 to 500% increase in performance.
Wow.
Yeah. If you just think about people turning in timesheets or people turning in stuff, right? And they're late, so they impact somebody else.
Right.
When we're late, if we're in an organization, we impact other people. If it's our own organization, am I starting my meetings on time, right? Am I doing what I said for my people? If I told them I'm going to meet with them monthly, but I don't, I cancel all the time, right? So there's 4 aspects that we work on in leadership in I told you we do this program called Being a Leader, and the effective exercise of leadership. And what people come away with is being great leaders and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression. It's like they can't even help but provide leadership.
Wow.
There's 4 aspects, and one aspect is integrity.
Yes.
One aspect is authenticity. One aspect is being up to something bigger than ourselves.
That's good.
And the 4th aspect, which is we call being cause in the matter. So there's 4 aspects that we work on over 6 days, over a 3-month period.
Yeah.
And yeah. So we're not working on your title. and we're not working on management.
Right.
Because if you can have it happen through management, you don't need leadership.
Correct.
But today, leadership is missing in many organizations. They collapse it with management, or they collapse it with title and say, well, I have a title, so I'm providing leadership. That's not the case.
Correct.
And you know, as you talked about, I think you're a real visionary when you talk about what you're seeing going on in the world in terms of, I think you called it pivoting. Is that what you called it? Yeah. Yeah. You know, my goal is that when we pivot, that those people that are going to take on those roles, that we have them prepared to provide great leadership.
So let's stay there, because I think that is so important. But I believe because a lot of people don't have that vision for their future, they hold on to the role too long, not understanding that they won't be in the role forever. So they're not preparing that next generation, which is the Gen X and the millennial and the Gen Zs. So they get upset with us when we get these, when they're thrust in a position, but nobody took the time to prepare us for this position we were thrust into. And the organization is so busy that we don't have the proper coaching, the proper mentors, and the proper tools to truly be successful. So it's almost like you set that generation up to fail, because the other generation is afraid to think about what happens after I get out of this role.
Right.
Like, next for me, and how does it affect the generations behind me.
Yeah.
And I believe we all forget, like, not everybody is a big picture thinker, right? I get that. I embrace that. I understand that. But you need big picture thinkers around, because this is how legacies die. This is how things die, when we're not thinking of transition and we're not putting people in place to be able to carry that torch. If something dies with you and it does not extend or go forward, you did yourself a disservice.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really, really smart. Very wise, Allison.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I believe that great leaders create great leaders around them. And so some organizations, you know, the organizations we work with are those that are interested in supporting and recognize that that their performance, performance is tied on the growth of the people.
Yes.
People don't always see that, because we're in a knowledge, we're not just robots, you know. We are today. Work is more complex than ever. People's roles are more complex than ever. And so the easy stuff is, is technology tools, and who knows what's going to happen with AI, right? So it's more important than ever, I think, to have people developing. I measured it. I measured the impact of leadership development for 10 years on one of the organizations I was part of. And the businesses inside of that organization, where they took on their leadership, they, from the top to the bottom, we had 49 locations. From top to bottom, the ones that took on, the leaders that really took on, and they shared what they learned with others, the performance difference was, from the top to the bottom, was 60%.
I can believe it.
And that was in changing economic times. So, the interest rates were different, right? I mean, 10 years is a pretty good span. And so I believe, and I've seen it with my clients, that if they don't continue to ask, what's next? What are we creating? Who are we developing? Right? Who are those great people around us? Because I think sometimes we're scared that what if they get better than I do? Well, that's what I want. I want them to be better than me.
Correct. And that's so true, Bambi. And I think that's something that I say often to people that are like, oh, Allison, I just want to be like you. No, I want you to be better than me.
Yeah.
Because you're just like me. I did you and myself a disservice. Because the thing is, these generations are going to have access to even more information than I do. Yes. So they can go, like I always say, they can go quicker, stronger, further than me, because of the level of information they're going to have at their fingertips. So just positioning them so that they are successful, I think, is so crucial. And especially now more than ever, because what we're seeing and what we will continue to see is people leaving their traditional 9-to-5 to start this entrepreneurship and these consulting roles, because it gives you more freedom, more flexibility, and you can chart your own path. Whereas working for a major corporation, if they're not developing you, you're just kind of sitting there stagnant.
So I think if you're looking, if you're looking for an opportunity, you ask those questions, right? Is there an opportunity do you provide opportunities for growth and development, right? Is learning, because it's a different model. Our organizations are different. Some of them have that model. Tell me about how you get feedback. How do you get brand feedback? So if I was going to engage you, how do you deal with brand feedback if I wanted to see how I showed up in the market?
So that's a great question. And I think it's needed now more than ever, because if we think of generations in the past, brands, your personal brand was really just slated for the CEO and anybody in the C-suite position. But now with the way that social media is set up, the importance of needing a digital footprint, you want somebody to assess and tell you, hey, this is what I see when I see you. And you want to get somebody that actually can speak your language, is clear on what you're trying to achieve. So they're asking you the right questions, right? So how I give feedback is I listen and I observe. I do a lot of listening and observing and watching. So I watch people before I try to give any type of feedback. And I learned that from you, because you asked me a question in Thought Leaders and you're like, Allison, I don't want to give you unintentional feedback. So do I have your permission to give you feedback? And I think in all my 30 plus years, I don't know if anybody's ever asked me, can they give me feedback? They just give it to me, even if I didn't ask for it. So I learned the importance of asking for it, because it made me stop and think, wow, she thinks enough of me to ask me, is it okay to give me some feedback? And I believe I was more receptive because of how you approach me, instead of just being like, this is what you're doing wrong. This is the feedback I have for you. You asked me. So when I give brand feedback, and I think now more than ever, it's important to understand the importance of your personal brand, because a resume is great. It speaks to who you are, but people know, I say this all the time, people will look you up before they read your resume. I will go to, like, LinkedIn is like the yellow pages for me. I will be on LinkedIn looking up people, just getting an idea of what they're doing, and if they're truly doing what they say they're doing, or is it just something for LinkedIn. So it's important, because your brand is what sells you. Even if you work for a corporation, your brand is what people are going to do business with. I think we don't understand the importance of having a strong personal brand, because a lot of the times these corporations they're almost like mystical figures. They're not very tangible, but the people are. So when you have a strong brand and you're able to come across and articulate yourself, communicate well, help me understand what it is that you bring to the table, then I'm able to engage with you more intentionally. And I feel like it's a relationship that we're building versus just a sell or kind of a transaction. I really feel like, so just having a strong online presence and being okay with the feedback that you get regarding your online presence, and knowing that it's coming from a good intentional place and that I want to see you win.
That's great. Well, as I'm listening to you, one of the things that's really clear for me that's not my expertise, but because we're everywhere now, right? It seems to me like what you provide is needed more than ever.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you said, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I get a call from somebody. I'm Googling them. I'm looking at their LinkedIn. I'm looking at their Facebook page. I'm looking at YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even the younger generation, like, don't get me wrong, I have a 17-year-old who's about to go to college, and I am on her about her personal brand, but not because what 17-year-old is thinking about it, but even at their age, colleges are looking at that. Her future, I tell her all the time, what you put out in the world, you don't want to regret it 10 years from now. So let's be very intentional with what we're putting out.
Yeah. The other thing I would add to that is relationships.
Yes.
People don't pay attention to, I used to not, I love people. But I did not realize how critical relationships are. I'd go to my office when I was an executive, and our chairman used to say, why don't you visit more? And I was like, visit more? I've got work to do, right? That didn't occur for me like work. Yeah. And, for a while there, I got for some reason, when people got reorged out of their company, I was part of the Executive Women's Partnership at the Greater Houston Partnership for
Okay.
20 something years.
Wow.
And anytime a senior woman got reorged out, because that's senior women in that group,
Yes.
they would say, go see Bambi, which is not what I advertised but I just figured God sent them to me. So I was going to help them. But I have to tell you, when I really started to boil down to why they got reorged, because sometimes they say, the other person wasn't performing like I was performing, or right. So not really understanding. And when we started to inquire about relationships, the other person had relationships, like authentic relationships. And I don't know I think women need to work on it more than men. Because this happened to be a group of women. Okay. So maybe my group was women, but even men, I hear them say, "What? I don't have time for relationships."
Right.
So now, and you don't have to be somebody's best friend to have a relationship with them.
Correct.
The way I rate a relationship is, do you know what matters to them? And do they know that you know what matters to them? You can create a relationship and not even like somebody.
Correct.
You don't have to be their best friend. I don't have to go drink with them. Right. But do I know what matters to them? People want to feel known. And if you're, one of the things I think would be great to train your daughter in now is those relationships that she meets at college, those are going to be CEOs of companies one day. Those are going to be decision makers in things she might want to do one day. So it is an authentic commitment to people. It isn't like a manipulation, like, oh, let me get to know them so I can get what I want.
Right.
That doesn't work. But it's really an authentic commitment to what really matters to people.
Right.
We got trained at the Department of Surgery, one of the hospitals in Houston. They trained us to develop their fourth-year surgery residents, because they found out that when they had more leadership and effective communication and those kind of things, they were better doctors. If I walk through a hospital today and one of those surgeons I trained sees me, they will stop me and say, you know what? I can get a CAT scan faster than anybody. If I need this, I get it faster than anybody. People keep saying, how do I do that? And they'll say, you need to talk to Bambi. And I said, well, what is it that I taught you? And they said, I have relationships with those people.
Yes.
And they will call me back. I pay attention to relationships. And so if I could offer anything, no matter what role you're in, having that be part of the work. And I can just sit next to people in a meeting and it doesn't take long to find out.
Right.
Just start to listen, ask a few questions. So when you talk about, so I think that's goes with your brand. So if I'm working on being effective in my brand and I'm authentically building relationships and I'm honoring my word, Katie, bar the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think that is so important because what you said a mouthful there. And I want to kind of dissect a few things before we get off. I ask you what they say is.
Okay.
I think we often bypass the little people. We go straight for those big titles, not thinking that, hey, that server, the janitor, or the driver, those people you want access to that big person, but you got to think, who do they spend most of their time with, right? So the people that you're trying to bypass to get to them are going to have the easiest in to them because they spend the most time with them and they have that real relationship. They probably know more about that person than people closest to them because they spend their time with them. So I think it's important not to bypass anybody and try to cultivate real relationships with people. Because like you said, you never know where someone's going to end up. And it's not just to get something, but it's to genuinely know that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if we are in two different realms in the world, call you and you help me get access to something, or can you call me and I help you get access? I think that's huge. I think that's huge, Bambi, and that's something that's so simple that I think we forget about. So I thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and when I was in a bank CEO, my assistant, if she didn't like somebody, if they didn't treat her well, I never hired them.
Correct.
Right? Exactly what you're saying. Yeah. I was going to share what I have on one of the things I have for my 2024 goals.
Okay.
That It's exactly what you're talking about, because I can catch myself going to a restaurant not even paying attention to the server.
Right.
And so I'm committed to empower everyone I encounter,
That's good.
making them feel heard and appreciated.
That's good.
And no matter who it is, right? Because everybody matters.
Yes.
We're all part of the human race that, right? That,
Yeah.
listen, I don't get to do anything without the people that serve me.
Right.
So yeah, I've taken that on at a whole nother level for 2024. So I appreciate you
I love that.
pointing out the level. Like, it doesn't matter who you are.
Right. People just treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's like a golden rule, right? But something that we often forget. So Bambi, we have like flown through this. I knew this was going to happen. Like I so knew, I don't even feel like it's almost been an hour, but I had this feeling in my mind this is going to happen because it's just something magical about you. And I'm like, oh, once Bambi gets on here, it's going to fly by, and all that stuff that her and I try to talk about. We probably got some of it, but I don't want to leave without asking you something that I always ask, because it's called They Say. What has your experience been with what is your they say, Bambi? What if someone said to you, or something has happened, or even if you said to yourself, what is your they say?
That where I say to myself where I couldn't do something, or where I could do something, or
when they say you can't, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, something not going to happen. Well, I think I don't remember anybody saying I couldn't make something happen. I think who's been the hardest for me has been myself.
Okay.
So, my business partner, when I started my company, went to Rice.
Okay.
I went to Sam Houston. Sam Houston's a great school. I got very prepared there.
Yes.
But I grew up in a suburb of Houston called Jersey Village.
Yeah.
And I used to say, well, I'm just Bambi from Jersey Village. Right. I just went to Sam Houston. I didn't go to Rice, or I didn't go to Harvard, And so, so I think that they say was really what I said to myself is I'm not big enough. And when I catch myself with CEOs of some major corporations, every now and then that'll pop up.
Yeah.
And I have to, put it aside and look to see what I'm committed to. But I wish I don't have one of those, at least that I remember.
No, but but you bring up an even better one. What if your they say is yourself?
Yeah.
And that's huge, because I know a lot of us have a lot of self-critical talk, and we do a lot of self-comparison versus owning our space, right? And staying in our lane and owning our space. Like you said, if I didn't go to Rice, but you went to Sam Houston. And look, like, let's just talk about what an impact you have made, like, not even just in Texas. Like, I feel like you've made a global impact, because just the leaders that you have been able to produce and help them rethink and reshape, you're just being multiplied all over the world. You're like sprinkling Bambi everywhere.
So I appreciate the confidence.
Yeah, well, but it's true, because I think about myself, and then I think about the ladies that were in my class, and then I just think about how you've been doing this intentional work for over 25 years. Yeah. You are making an impact, and it could possibly be far greater, but this is what God has called you to do. And so because of that, it's a greater, like, you've duplicated yourself, and not just duplicated yourself, but duplicated tools to make us more successful and be able to engage more intentionally.
Thank you. You're so kind.
Yes.
I need you to walk around and just talk in my ear.
Okay. I'll start tomorrow.
I've been very blessed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you definitely have. And I'm excited because my daughter just found out she got into Sam Houston. So we're excited. She's going to Sam Houston. So I'm excited to go, that she's not going to be too far from home, but still far enough where she can feel like she's living her life.
It's a great school. Not so big that you get lost in it too. You really do get connections with your professors. It's great.
Yes, and I think that's important, especially as you transition to that next level. So Bambi, how do we keep in contact with you? What fabulous things do you have going on?
Well, let's see. I have a website. It's partnerschrysalis.com.
Yes, ma'am.
And so partnerschrysalis.com. And we do have a Being a Leader course coming up. The leadership course, if you're really committed to take yourself on, that starts at the end of the 1st of March. We have thought leaders. We have a thought leader group that's going to be starting soon. So if you have somebody to nominate, needs to be a senior woman that's willing to do a year-long program together and willing to share and to create really their own board, right? It's really your own personal board, and we grow together. We have fun together. That's also available, and yeah, that's and luckily I have a really nice stable of great clients that I work with, regularly.
Yeah, no, you really do. And I definitely think I want to pause on the thought leaders and just in general, like one of my best and like biggest investments and thing I'm so grateful I did was thought leaders. It changed my life. Allison McFarlane Inc. would not be around if it wasn't for thought leaders and Susan and Bambi really pulling me aside and having a come to Jesus conversation with me, which I'm grateful for their level of influence because they're both very powerful women, right? So to get those women at their level to realize that something is wrong and figure out a way to try to help you, I'm forever grateful for that. You ladies taking that time with me, and it definitely is going to pay off. You'll see. But just if you can make that investment, I think that was one of the best investments I made on myself was getting into thought leaders, sitting at someone like Bambi's feet to really dig into who Allison is outside of all these fabulous things that everyone sees, but really get to the core of who I am. It changed my life. And that's why I say she's impacted me both professionally and personally, because it was far greater than just going into a room with a bunch of women. And I think I can speak for our group. Like I have a whole another set of sisters that I can call and we're going and doing stuff. We're still texting and we've kept in contact with each other and it's been very intentional. So I thank you, Bambi. I know we have so many people up here that are speaking highly of you and you deserve it. You deserve your flowers. And I'm excited to see what Bambi 3.5 looks like. And what's a personal brand, like the elevation that's coming for you. Cause yes, you are an influencer and you are a thought leader yourself. So just being able to see you kind of come forth more, I'm excited for this next chapter.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for having me, and and congratulations on your success. And I think you have found the perfect place for you. That I think you have a lot to contribute, and I probably need to call you and say I need some help.
Yeah, you are here, so whatever you need, I got you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be with you always.
Yes, thank you so much. And you guys, guess what? That's the end of They Say. So Bambi, thank you. We had a great time. That hour flew by. So I will see you guys next week with another amazing entrepreneur that I love and adore. And I just thank you, Bambi, for just saying yes to me. And I'm just excited for what 2024 has in store for us. All right.
Good
night, everyone.
Goodbye.